those 313 in number, they didn't turn back. They didn't run back on their heels. They didn't say like the followers of Musa alayhi salam, like going back to the beginning. What did the followers of Musa alayhi salam, some of them say to Musa alayhi salam? They said, فَاذْهَبْ أَنْتَ وَرَبُّكَ فَقَاتِلَ إِنَّا هَؤُنَا قَاعِدُونَ. You and your Lord go, we're going to stay here. And that's why we find inside the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with them. لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ. Allah is pleased with those believers who gave their hand underneath the tree, who gave the pledge. Going back to that treaty of Hudaybiyah, that when that companion or that individual, Urwa, then he made a statement about the companions. That's the same location. Allah sent down these verses that Allah is pleased with those believers who gave that pledge underneath the tree. وَالسَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ مِنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارِ وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُمْ بِإِحْسَانٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. The Muhajirin and the Ansar, those people who traveled to Mecca, and the Ansar, the helpers inside Medina, and those who follow their footsteps in goodness, Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Allah. Likewise in Surah Al-Bayyinah that we find inside the Quran, Allah once again praises these people. رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who is he talking about? Subhanahu wa ta'ala. None other than the Sahabah, the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's how we find that all of them have been given glad tidings of paradise. So sometimes we walk about thinking that we're people of paradise. But these companions have been given glad tidings of paradise, not just by the Quran, but by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because we know that he's been given wahi revelation. Asharatul Mubashara, the 10 companions, have been given glad tidings of paradise. Thabit ibn Qais, one of the companions, you go back to Surah Al-Hujurat, the 49th chapter of the Quran. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَرْفَعُوا أَصْوَاتَكُمْ فَوْقَ صَوْتِ النَّبِيِّ. Or you who believe, don't raise your voice above the voice of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thabit ibn Qais, he had a deep voice, a loud voice. When he heard these verses inside the Quran, he said that I'm going to be amongst the people of the hellfire. Because verily the ayat, they continue, أَن تَحْبَتَ أَعْمَالُكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. That your actions become null and void and you don't even perceive it. Anybody's actions who become null and void is amongst the people of the hellfire. Thabit ibn Qais, he went into hiding. Now the Prophet Muhammad cared about his companions. He asked, where is Thabit ibn Qais? They searched for him and they found him hiding at home. He called him and he said to the companions that I'm amongst the people of the hellfire. Because Allah said this, whoever raises their voice, and every time he would talk to us, and I would talk, my voice would go over his voice, from amongst the people of the hellfire. The Prophet Muhammad said, no, call him. Indeed, he is from amongst the people of paradise. So now the Prophet Muhammad has testified for him, you're amongst the people of paradise. Bilal, Al-Habashi, the Ethiopian slave or the Abyssinian slave. The Prophet Muhammad said that I heard his footsteps in paradise. This is testification, he's made it to paradise. I heard your footsteps in paradise, tell me what do you do? Because every time I perform wudu, I read 2 rakat units of prayer. That's what I always do, that's what made him get to paradise. It's something to think about. Hamza, Sayyidul Shuhada, the leader of the martyrs, has been guaranteed paradise. Hassan and Hussein, his grandchildren, have been guaranteed paradise. The young children of paradise. And then his own daughter Fatima radiallahu anha, and all of his wives are guaranteed paradise. Fatima, she states, or she was with the Prophet Muhammad and she began to cry, and then she began to laugh. Aisha radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet Muhammad, she asked Fatima, she said that first you was talking to your father and you began to cry. And then you began to laugh. What did he say to you? She goes, at the first time he said to me that I'm going to leave this dunya. So being a daughter, she would cry. That's her father. Firstly, that's the Prophet of Allah. And secondly, or maybe even firstly, that's her father. So anybody's father is going to leave, that's going to make them weep. He told her, I'm going to leave this dunya. That's what made her cry. And she goes, as for what made me laugh or smile, It's because he said to me, my beloved father sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, you are going to be the first one that's going to join me. So that's glad tidings of what? Paradise. For his own daughter. And all of Ahlul Bayt, all of his family are guaranteed paradise, those of them who believe. And that's how we find in the hadith, لا تسبوا أصحابي, don't ever curse my companions. If you ever want to know anybody, this famous word that we find, Ahlul Sunnah, anybody who is not following the way of the Sunnah, is those people who we classify as Ahlul Shia, people in mainstream Iran at the moment. They are people who curse the companions. لا تسبوا أصحابي, don't curse my companions, are the words of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If one of you was to spend the mount of Uhud, many of the ulama, they concluded, is it one mountain? It's a range of mountains. If you were to spend the weight of that in gold, it would not equal one mud, one handful, or half a handful of charity that my companions give. That if one of us was to give a mountain full of gold, the weight of it in charity at the moment, you cannot equivalent to one handful or half a handful of charity that my companions give. And all of the ulama have concluded, if you want to recognize the people who are evil to the companions, they will curse them. That is the sign. Anybody who curses any one of the companions, that is not a person of Ahlul Sunnah. That is a criteria, lesson that all of us can go back with today. One is to follow their path. And secondly, to cling to it. And thirdly, anybody who opposes that path. And fourthly, anybody who speaks ill of them is not a person who is from amongst Ahlul Sunnah. And just to conclude, that they did make mistakes. They did make mistakes, but they have all been forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of them have been forgiven. All those who fought in the day on the battle of Badr. All of them who fought in the battle of Uhud. All of them who died upon Iman and belief in the Prophet Muhammad have all been forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is only us who have fallen into that. So we must try in conclusion to die amongst that last ummah. Because we without doubt have been given that privilege that we are the final ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or amongst the final ummah. نحن الآخرون السابقون يوم القيامة. We are the last, but we are the first on the day of judgment. What a great blessing that is. All of those millions and billions of people that have come before. And just at the beginning, each of those prophets that had their followers, they all have to stop until the Prophet Muhammad opens the gates of paradise. And we will be, inshallah, the first ones to go into paradise. But how are we going to be amongst those people who will make it to paradise? Even a small thing like the performance of ablution, the performance of wudu. Because they asked, the companions asked, how are we going to be recognized as your followers? How are we going to be recognized as your followers? He said, min atharil wudu, from the signs of ablution. Meaning the more that you try to perfect yourself in your ablution, your bodily parts will shine. Your face will shine, your arms will shine, and your feet will shine. And you will be recognized that you are the follower or the followers of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just like a white hair on a black ox, on a black buffalo. How does a strand of white hair stand out? That is the way that this final ummah will stand out. So another lesson that we can go back with, that even if we perform ablution properly, with the correct intention and following the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, we'll be recognized in that final day to be the followers of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as long as we live and follow that path of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the men around him, the Sahabah radiyallahu anhum ajma'een, we follow that path. Because some people like to make this statement that we are men and they are men. Yes, linguistically they may have been men, but there is a difference of the heavens and the earth between us today who claim to be men and those people who are real men. And in conclusion we find, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبَلَنَا. Whoever strives in our path, we will show them our path. That is a simple message. To strive to find that final path of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. Anything good and correct I've said has been from the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything incorrect has been from the whisperings of shaitan and from my own self. وجزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وجزاكم الله خير.